They told me she had moved on. That was the word the refugee handler used on Kalar station, 3 weeks after I crawled out of the Verith borderlands on a borrowed supply runner with 2 cracked ribs and no identification. Moved on. As though Verith of the Selene court was the kind of woman who moved on from anything. I had been listed as killed in action for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. I knew the exact count because the handler showed me the file, a Selene court death record, stamped in gold, my name rendered in their script beneath a formal declaration of absence. The humans who processed border casualties had confirmed the designation without verification. It happened. The borderlands were chaos after the Verith surge, and I was one of 40 names on a manifest that never came home. What the handler did not tell me, and what I found out from a dock worker who recognized my name and went pale, was that the Selene court had spent the last 8 months pressuring Verith to accept a new bonding contract. 3 noble houses backing 1 Lord Consul the Ran Voss. A formal ceremony scheduled for the morning of the 22nd. The dock worker checked his calendar. It was the 22nd. I did not run. Men who run arrive breathing too hard to say anything useful. I walked to the transit platform, caught the first shuttle to the Selene surface, and sat in the back with my hands on my knees while the planet came up through the viewport, pale gold and green, the way I remembered it, the way I had spent 3 years in a Verith field camp remembering it on the nights when memory was the only thing keeping me oriented. The Dawn Hall sits at the center of the Selene capital's ceremonial quarter. Pale stone, old beyond any human reckoning, with lattice skylights cut into the vaulted ceiling so that morning light falls in long clean columns across the floor. I had stood in that hall twice before, once when Verith presented me to her court as a bonded human consort, and once 6 months later when her younger sister married a Selene lord and we sat together in the 3rd row and she held my hand under the edge of her robe the entire ceremony because she found formal occasions tedious and my hand helped her tolerate them. I knew the hall. I knew where the side doors were. The ceremony had already begun when I arrived. I could hear the presiding elder's voice through the stone as I came down the service corridor, the formal cadences of a bonding declaration, slow and ceremonial, the kind of language that fills a room and makes everything feel inevitable. I found the side door, pushed it open quietly, and stepped into the back of the hall. There were perhaps 200 people inside. Selene nobility, court officials, the representatives of 3 noble houses arranged in careful formation near the front. The hall smelled the way it always did, old stone and the particular incense the court used for formal occasions, something that burned low and left a faint sweetness in the air. Lord Consul the Ran Voss stood at the front of the hall beside the elder. He was tall even by Selene standards, dark armored in his house colors, with the bearing of a man who had been told since birth that rooms belonged to him. He was holding a bonding contract scroll. I could see the gold seal from where I stood, and he was reading from it in a voice calibrated to carry. Verith stood 3 paces to his left. She was wearing court white. Her dark teal hair was dressed in the formal style, pinned with the 3 gold pieces her rank required. Her silver lavender skin caught the morning light from the skylights above, and her gold eyes were fixed on a point somewhere past the Ran Voss's left shoulder. Not on him, not on the elder, not on the scroll. She was looking at nothing, which was how Verith looked when she was enduring something. I knew that look. I had seen it the first time her advisors argued in front of her about a trade route she had already decided on. I had seen it the morning her eldest brother told her, in front of half the court, that her choice of a human consort reflected poorly on the family standing. Her hands were wrong, too. She held them folded at her waist, which was correct form, but her left thumb was pressed hard into her right palm, the thing she did when she was keeping herself very still by force. I started moving. I did not announce myself. There was nothing to announce. I was a man in worn civilian clothes with 3 years of border dust still in the creases of my jacket, walking up the center aisle of the Selene Dawn Hall while a bonding ceremony proceeded at the front. The first people to notice were the ones I passed, a court official who turned to look at me and then kept looking, a noble's aide who touched his neighbor's sleeve. I kept my eyes on Verith. The elder faltered first. He was trained to notice disruptions and he noticed me 20 feet out, a human, unarmed, walking forward without stopping, and something in my face must have told him that asking me to stop would produce an outcome no one in this hall had prepared for. He let the cadence of his words slow. The Ran Voss turned. I had thought about what I would say. In the shuttle, in the transit corridor, I had arranged words and then discarded them, because everything I came up with sounded like a speech, and I was not there to make a speech. I was there because 3 years ago I had made a promise in this same hall, in front of fewer people but no less formally, and I had not been released from it. The Ran Voss said, This ceremony is closed to. I know, I said. I was not looking at him. I was looking at Verith. She had not moved. She was still holding her hands folded at her waist, still holding that endurance look on her face, but the thumb had stopped pressing into her palm and her gold eyes had found me and they were not moving. The morning light was full on her face. I watched her recognize me, not the way you recognize a face you remember, but the way you recognize something you had told yourself to stop believing in, and the telling had never quite worked. Her lips parted. She did not speak immediately. She was a queen and she had spent 40 years learning to take her time before she spoke, and she took it now, standing in the middle of her own bonding ceremony with the whole court watching, and she looked at me the way the dock worker on Kalas station had looked at my name in the file, as though the fact of me required a moment to become real. Kale, she said. It was not a question. It was not a greeting. It was the way you say a word when you have been very careful not to say it for a long time and the carefulness has just become unnecessary. The hall was silent. The Ranvos said something. I did not hear it. I crossed the last of the distance between us and stopped in front of her, close enough that she would not have to raise her voice, far enough that the choice of what came next was entirely hers. That had always been the arrangement. I was the one who showed up. She was the one who decided what it meant. Her gold eyes moved across my face the way hands move across something they are checking for damage. The cracked ribs had healed, but I was thinner than I had been, and the borderlands had left marks that did not wash off. She catalogued all of it. She took her time. Then she reached out and put her right hand against the side of my face, flat palm, the way she had always done it, her thumb at my cheekbone, and she said, still in that same quiet voice, "You were listed as dead." I know, I said. The paperwork was wrong. Something moved through her expression. 3 years of weight shifting, quietly, into a different configuration. Her eyes were bright with it, but she did not let them spill. She was a queen, and the whole court was watching, and she had survived 3 years of this court's pressure with her composure intact, and she was not going to give up that composure now. She was just going to hold my face in her hand and let the room understand what it was seeing. I heard the elder behind me, very carefully, set the bonding contract scroll down on the ceremonial table. I heard the Ranvos's House representative begin a formal objection. I heard it end when someone from the court, I did not see who, said something in Selene that I did not catch, in the tone that means the room has already made its determination. Veritha's hand was still against my face. Your contract, I said, with Voss, was not yet sealed, she said. The scroll was unsigned. Then I'm in time. You are 3 years late, she said. And then, in a different register, lower, meant for me and not the hall, but you are in time. I put my hand over hers, the hand she still had against my face, and held it there. That was all. No speech. No gesture for the court's benefit. Just her hand and mine and the morning light coming through the skylights and 200 people in the Selene Dawn Hall understanding, without being told, that the ceremony they had come to witness was over and what they were watching instead was something else entirely. Lord Consul Varan Voss left without a formal declaration. His House representatives followed. The elder, with the quiet efficiency of a man who had been performing Selene ceremonies for 40 years and knew how to read a room, began the low murmured recitation that formally dissolves a pending bonding proceeding. It took 4 minutes. Verith did not move. Neither did I. When the elder finished, he looked at us, looked at the hall, and said, in the formal court voice, the one that carries to every corner, the bonding proceeding is dissolved. The Queen's consort has returned. The court will record this date accordingly. The court recorded it. I heard the scribe's styluses on their tablets, the sound of it spreading back through the hall like water. Verith lowered her hand from my face. She tucked it into the crook of my arm instead, not a formal court gesture, just a practical one, the way she had always moved through a room when she wanted to make clear that she was moving through it with someone, and she said, quietly, looking straight ahead at the hall full of people who were now all looking at us, "You smell like a border camp." 3 weeks on a supply runner, I said. I'll have someone draw a bath. That would be good. She was not smiling. She did not smile easily, had never smiled easily, but there was something in the set of her mouth that was the version of it she reserved for moments when smiling would have been insufficient anyway. Gold eyes straight ahead. Her hand in the crook of my arm. We walked out of the Dawn Hall together, the way we had walked out of it 3 years ago, the morning after the court ceremony where she first presented me as her consort and half the assembled nobility had not known what to make of me. She had walked out the same way then, head up, hand in my arm, not performing anything, just walking. Some things, she had told me once, should be done the same way every time, so that the people watching understand it is not a moment. It is a pattern. It is what you do. She was right. She usually was. The dawn hall doors opened onto the morning courtyard, pale stone and clean light, and the doors closed behind us, and it was quiet. 3 years, she said. I know. I did not sign the scroll. I know, I said. I saw your hands. She stopped walking. She looked at me. The bright-eyed thing was closer to the surface now, out here where the court could not see it. You saw my hands, she said. Your left thumb. You press it into your right palm when you're holding yourself still by force. You've done it since the first time your brother argued trade routes at you in front of the court. She was quiet for a moment. 3 years in a border camp, she said, and you came back remembering my hands. I came back, I said, because they were yours. She looked at me for a long time, the way she had looked at me in the hall, that same thorough, unhurried inventory. Then she put her hand back in the crook of my arm and started walking again, and I walked with her, across the pale stone courtyard and into the morning. That was enough. It had always been enough.